And this is it, the fifth and the final stage of the Tour Fever. Today we are racing on La Boucle in Paris, 19.2 kilometers with 126 meters of elevation and just 17 riders on the start line. Tour Fever is the Zwift 5-stage summer racing series with every finishing time added to the general classification. That means consistency matters and every second gained or lost across the series can affect the final ranking. My Tour Fever started with a brutal 10 kilometers time trial on Loop de Loop just after returning from 2 weeks away. I finished in 14 minutes and 58 seconds, averaging 288 watts and passing inside the top 10% overall. Stage 2 was a tactical race on Casse-Pattes. I attacked near the top of the Petit KOM and briefly created a gap, but the group came back before the finish, leaving me with 5th place. Then came stage 3 in Paris. The race exploded on Montmartre, and after a very close final sprint, I finished 3rd, only 11 hundredths of a second behind the winner. Stage 4 was probably my strongest physical performance of the series. I set a new personal best on the Petit KOM in 5 minutes and 14 seconds, and I produced 338 watts for 5 minutes, my second best 5 minutes effort ever. But the level was incredibly high, and that was only enough for the 13th place. Before today's final stage, I'm sitting around 200ths overall, out of roughly 26,000 participants across all categories. Of course, not everyone has completed every stages, but it still gives me a very strong position to defend. The decisive point today should once again be the Montmartre climb. My plan is to stay protected, save as much energy as possible, and assess how the legs feel on the climb. Then, if I'm strong enough, I want to attack near the top and continue pushing over the summit. The goal is to create a small breakaway, ideally with as few riders as possible, and avoid bringing the strongest sprinter with me to the finish. This is the final stage, so there is nothing left to save. Let's see whether I can finish the Tour Fever with one last big attack. At kilometer 3.7, we begin the first difficulty of the day is the Arc de Triomphe climb. The gradient itself is not especially steep, but as always on Zwift, it is the riders who make the climb difficult. This is where we see the first serious acceleration of the race, with the riders at the front pushing above 6 watts per kilo. I stay near the back of the group and try to benefit from as much draft as possible, while the peloton gradually begins to stretch out. Everyone looks strong, and for the moment most riders are managing to hold on. The only rider beginning to struggle is Kingo from Denmark. He loses a few meters and quickly finds himself around 10 meters behind me. You may simply be climbing at a slightly slower pace, but on a short climb like this, even a small gap can become extremely difficult to close. As you can see on the left of the screen, over 1 minute I average more than 330 watts, which shows just how hard we are climbing. Near the top I activate my Hero Power Up so I can collect a new one at the banner. And this is the feather. Nice for the climb. This effort definitely hurts. I manage it reasonably well, but my heart rate climbs quickly, and I imagine most of the riders around me are feeling exactly the same. Apart from the riders who were already distanced earlier, nobody is completely dropped as the group remains relatively compact. But the pace on this first climb shows that everyone is motivated, and when the decisive battle begins later in the race, things could be extremely aggressive. At kilometer 8, we enter in the Montmartre KOM segment. Up to this point, the pace has been relatively controlled. I spent most of the race riding in zone 2, but now the serious part begins. Just like on the early climb, riders start accelerating from the first slopes of Montmartre. My power quickly rises towards 350 to 400 watts, which is between 5 and 6 watts per kilo for me. At the front, some riders are already pushing above 7 watts per kilo, including Van der Merwe, who has spent most of the race near the front and continues to impose a very strong pace. We are climbing fast and a few riders begin to struggle at the back, but the group is still surprisingly compact. As we approach the second part of the climb, where the gradient rises above 8%, I'm gonna activate my feather and gradually begin moving up through the group. The plan, as I explained before the start, is to attack near the summit and try to break this group apart. Almost everyone has saved the feather for this section, so when all the power-ups are activated, the pace increases even further. Still above 5 watts per kilo, with around 370 watts over the previous minutes. And then close to 385 watts as we approach the top. Despite the intensity, the group is still largely together. So just before the summit, with my heart rate already at 185 beats per minute, I decide to continue the effort and push over the top. A small gap immediately begins to open. The objective is to put the riders who are already suffering under even more pressure and take a reduced group into the descent. I don't want to end up completely alone because I still need enough riders to work together afterwards. But the fewer strong sprinters who survive this move, the better. I cross the Petit KOM banner in first position. It is not a new personal best, but the attack is launched. Because we only lost 2 riders on the climb and I picked up another feather at the banner, I decide to attack again on the small kicker during the descent. Some riders had to work hard to get back into the group, so I'm hoping they haven't fully recovered yet. I activate the feather and I launch a small short sprint at more than 12 watts per kilo. The gap opens immediately and for a few seconds nobody reacts. I know I need to keep pushing as long as possible, then use the descent to get into the super tuck and bring my heart rate back down after climbing above 180 beats per minute. For a moment, the move looks promising. But McBride, the American rider, also gets into the super tuck behind me. And he is probably heavier than I am because he closes the gap incredibly quickly without even pedaling. So, once again, the attack comes to nothing. The peloton reforms behind us and I have to make another small effort to get properly back into the group. At least the descent allowed me to recover a little, but after 2 attacks we are all together again. At kilometer 13.8, we reach the Arc de Triomphe climb again, this time from the opposite direction. And once again, the pace immediately becomes extremely intense. I have to push above 6 watts per kilo, between 400 and 450 watts, just to stay in contact with the group. The effort is beginning to hurt, and a few riders start losing a couple of meters at the back. But the level is very even, and nobody is completely dropped before the summit. So, despite all the acceleration and my 2 attempts to escape, 12 riders are still together. It now looks as though everything will be decided in a one final sprint. With 800 meters to go, the pace begins to rise gradually. Everyone is watching everyone else, nobody really wants to take control, even though the group is already riding faster than during the previous kilometers. Positioning is going to be crucial. I still have my aero power up, and the plan is to save it for the final meters and use it to make the difference in the sprint. 500 meters remaining. Yamada from Japan and City from Germany are leading the group, while I'm sitting right at the back. With less than 300 meters to go, everything suddenly explodes. We are already above 400 watts, 500 watts. I activate the aero and launch my sprint. But she is leading, followed by Mike Brad and GGI. I move into first position and keep accelerating at more than 10 watts per kilo. I'm closing all the way to the line. And I cross in the third place, dead level with GGI. A fantastic final sprint and another place on the podium to finish the Tour Fever. So, here's the final podium from the 5th and final stage of the Tour Fever. McBride takes the victory in 28 minutes and 33 seconds. Bucci finishes second, only 800ths of a second behind. And I share the third place with GGR, both of first finishing just 2800ths of a second behind the winner. G. Ellingsen complete the top 5, 4700ths of a second back. Congratulations to McBride for the victory. After such a tactical race and such a close sprint, every fraction of second mattered. For my part, this is the fantastic way to finish the Tour Fever. I tried twice to create a breakaway after Montmartre, but the group managed to come back each time. When it became clear that the race would end to the sprint, I stayed patient, saved my aero power up, and managed to come from the back of the group to take the third place on the line. And the overall Tour Fever result is even more satisfying. At the time of editing this video on Thursday, I'm ranked 112th overall out of more than 27,000 participants across all categories. I am also 33rd in the world in my category, and the number one French rider in my category, and the third French rider overall across every category. Of course, some riders did not complete every stage, but this is still a result I'm extremely proud of after 5 very different races. A time trial, a tactical road race, attacks on the climb, close sprints, a podium in Paris, and some of my best power numbers of the season. So the Tour Fever ends with another podium and a place among the very best riders in the overall standings. What was your favorite stage of the series? And do you think attacking twice after Montmartre was the right decision? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy following this Tour Fever journey, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for the next Zwift race and challenges. Ride on!